on Court Captains Podcast, we have Alisha Childress, the new head coach of the San Diego Mojo. Alisha, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited.
We're so excited to be chatting with you. I think our first head coach interview. So that's a
Think
very big
so.
milestone for us. And
Oh, wow.
definitely the first ex-player, now coach, our first interview and also the first in the league. So congratulations there.
Wow, we're hitting them up right off the bat.
Every single one. Every
First
single one.
Olympian.
First Olympian
Ooh,
for sure. Um,
wow.
so thanks so much. You are currently coaching Athletes Unlimited. So how's that going? Your first year coaching. How are you feeling about it? Two locations this year too. So how has that been? Just like want to hear how that's going.
Yeah, so the season is going really well. I think we were really excited about this roster. I think the goal every year for the player executive committee that I am still a part of, soon to be kicked out, is to just make sure that our roster is super deep. And we had, some all-stars, some Olympians, more Olympians than we've had in the past, which I think we were pretty fired up for. So the season's been off and running, and I think there's a pretty good excitement around the level. I think people can see that the rallies are long. It is hard to score. And players are evolving kind of as the match goes on. And that just makes it really fun. That's the goal, is like that it's kind of back and forth. You're having to constantly problem solve and figure out what's going to win you the match. What combination of players is going to make you successful from week in to week out. And so that's been really good. The level's been high. And then I think also just different format with kind of that 2 weeks of competition in Omaha with the break week. And normally we don't break down our court. Like normally we just stay there for the whole time in venue. So I actually just have to shout out like the whole team at Athletes Unlimited, kind of staff, all the people that were behind that move, because they picked that court up quick and brought literally everything, the whole show on the road, which you don't typically see. So having that done for the first time, I thought that was really well done. And I think both kind of in venue experiences, like you really feel like we've been there all season long. And that got put together really quickly. So I think that takes a lot of people, a lot of time and hours, man hours, and the athletes really appreciate it because it just contributes to feeling like this is really high level and in all of the different areas.
So going from being a player to a coach in this like very unique environment, is there anything that you brought to your new position, like as a coach, that you're like, as a player, I really wanted this? Because I think like the coaching is an interesting thing at in Athletes Unlimited because you also have to work with the captains, or I don't know, is that the correct term for the
Yeah, they're
leaders?
captains.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, they're captains. They're at the top of the leaderboard. And I think in the past, I think the goal has always been to put the players first and like have their say matter. So that's in the player executive committee, but also the captains, like being really in partnership. And so initially the role was facilitator. And so it's like, are you really coaching? What does facilitating really mean? And we shifted this year to actually, hey, we're just going to call you coach, because I think the intent behind the facilitation was just that we want more coaching to be in partnership. We want players to say, hey, like, we really love this. We don't love this drill, but we're open to it. Can you explain why or what? Just to have that conversation. And I think that was the intent behind it. But I think sometimes when you try to move the pendulum swings back the other way, where people think, oh, you don't do anything. The coaches don't do anything.
Mm.
The players run everything and the coaches just sit by and like let it happen. And so we're like, that's not it. And so the way that we like to describe it to kind of prospective coaches is that imagine like you have a head coach that's kind of in charge of everything, and at any given moment they're like, just kidding, you do everything. And so it's like you have to be this like really great assistant coach, but know that you have to step into the head coaching role at any given moment. So you have captains that have a really strong opinion about how they want practices structured, how they want to build their team. And then you also have captains that are like, hey, what do you think? Because I'm not really sure. I just want to show up and score points. Like that's all I want to
Hmm.
do. And so you have to be prepared to kind of handle all of those things, everything in between. And so there is some individual and technical work that you're seeing. And there is some kind of strategy, there's scouting, there's individual player development, team development very quickly, like in 2 practices, let's figure out a system. And so you're kind of doing all those things. And I think being a player, to your original question, um, I think it helps to know what's valuable in this short amount of time, because you can't do it all and you can't have a full scout. You don't have all the data because it doesn't make sense to take data from Team Blue week 1. Like
Right.
those are not now the same players. So I think you, as a player, I had that experience of going, okay, we really need to know things in general, and we need to really just have a plan that's simple that everybody can execute. Because you're also, with the more international athletes that we bring in, there's language barriers. So the more complicated you get, the more nuanced. I think sometimes when you want to make a complicated practice plan, you have to now explain it, and you have to make sure that each
Hmm.
like language option is going, okay, do you actually understand how this drill works? So sometimes repetition is really important because you're going to spend half your time explaining the drill. So I think having played in the league, I have a good understanding of what the successful facilitator slash now coach role does when it's working best. Is kind of speaking in that general, keeping it simple, not trying to reinvent the wheel kind of from week in to week out, but then also just recognizing that some players are going to want a lot of feedback and some players are going to want a little bit less, and some players really need to be managed from a load perspective, like, hey, we're not jumping today. I think this practice is going to be heavy jumping over here, so let's prioritize that. So I think having seen it and really felt it on the player side, I try to make decisions that support the masses, but also allow for individual differences.
Nice. Amazing. Very interesting.
Love
Thank
to
you.
hear all of that.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Well, focusing our questions now a little bit on the San Diego Mojo. How did your coaching position come about? Congratulations, also. Were you
Yeah.
taking your playing retirement like year by year, or was this coaching kind of always a goal of yours? How did it come about, and what was your plan there?
Yeah, I think playing was definitely on a year by year basis. I mean, with having a family, like everything's year by year. Sometimes it's only day to day. And so I think I wanted to play and get back to the court, but only in a way that makes sense to the family and only in a way that's sustainable for us. So it was always on a year by year basis, not necessarily. I mean, my body felt good, I felt good playing, so that wasn't necessarily the issue or kind of that deciding factor, but we have to make it make sense. And then I think towards the end of season year two of Vegas, I felt like even the whole time, and this is true of Athletes Unlimited and true of my 2 seasons there. I think because when I stepped away and coached at Stanford and kind of helped with some USA trips and teams, I now am kind of in this hybrid position where I do have a point of view. I have coached and I'm also a player. And I think that inherently feels like an advantage. However, it's a little dicey because I mean, there's a reason why players don't coach and coaches, like there is a reason for that. I think you want it to be in the best set of circumstances of a value add, but I think sometimes it does it feel like I'm trying to coach on top of, or that I'm contradicting somehow, or I think it's hard to figure out. And so I think it started to feel like I do love playing, but maybe my orientation or like where my eye goes or where my kind of focus and energy, maybe it's leaning a little coaching heavy, and it's the playing is fun. I genuinely like love walking in the gym and I'm like, ooh, I get to work on this today. I fundamentally love the sport, but I also have really enjoyed my time at Athletes Unlimited, just kind of getting my feet wet back into coaching. And I'm like, I fundamentally love walking in, like, what are we going to work on today? So I don't think that's changed. But I think more and more I am leaning, right, more coaching heavy. And so I think that's where at the end of the last season, I was starting to have kind of those conversations, both with our president in Vegas, like, is this something that you could see for me, and what would that look like? And then turn of events, turn of events, and this job in San Diego opened up, and I think you want to go for it and go big or go home in essence.
Hmm.
And so I threw my name out there and kind of went through that formal process to say, hey, like I'd love a shot, I'd love a chance. And so now here we are.
Yeah,
That's
amazing.
awesome.
I think that's something that has always been very apparent as a fan and as a watcher, is like in a lot of sports and in volleyball especially, there's like who's the coach on the floor kind of. There are like leaders and people who we can tell are like running the offense. A lot of times it's the setter who's the coach on the floor. And so that was something that we talked about a lot amongst ourselves of like, come on, we want Alisha to coach next year. She's the Vegas coach. But
No.
we were
Oh,
saying,
Yeah.
we were saying like
We
that
love
feels like such
that.
a natural next step for you because obviously you have just a wealth of experience. Um, kicking it back to like your experience, obviously, I think really early on in an episode, I was singing your praises to these two and educating Ian on the Penn State force that you were
Mhm.
and that I was watching on television when I was starting to play and was just like so excited. So for me also like the chance to fangirl a little bit. This is very exciting for me. But then you went on to play pro for some of the best teams in the world. In a handful of countries, and then you won a bronze medal in Rio. So that was like a very cool thing to watch, especially from me growing up in the Midwest and being a Penn State fan, to see your career progress. I guess my question is like, is there how is all of that experience informing your coaching philosophy? How has it as you've moved through? And like what has inspired what or who has inspired your coaching philosophies now?
Yeah. What a great question. And I think, yeah, just thank you in general for being a fan and knowing all of those
Ni-
things and
Nikki
sharing
has
it with
been,
Ian, I guess.
this is like a really big deal for her. I just
That's
want to say
awesome.
that.
No,
Yeah.
I appreciate that. I really do. So that's cool because it's you get older and older and it's just very appreciative that you followed and watched and supported. So I love that. And I would say I always kind of take it back to my like growing up experience. My grandfather was a basketball coach, my mom was my volleyball coach. And I always say this like dinner table conversation was like, what are you doing with that athlete? And how do you team bond? And how do you get them to be more aggressive? And that was just kind of forming my formative years were those conversations. And if it wasn't that, it was teaching in the classroom and, how do you get your students to do XYZ? Because they were all teachers and coaches. Um, and I think because she was a coach, as I started playing for other people, if I felt like I had or was leaning like I was having a tough experience, like, oh, this coach, she does it different from you, or he does XYZ, she was like, listen, like, we're never going to be in the space of like, hey, we can't do it because the coach isn't good, or we can't do it because the coach is XYZ. She goes, find the thing that they're really good at. And like, that's the thing you take. And so I really appreciate her insight on that, just because I think parents out there, I think we could do a better job of that as a whole, especially in youth sports, because like there's always a way that you can find like how do I do some growing in this situation, even if it's hard, even if it's tough. And I think like as parents, and I can attest to this now, like on being on the other end, like you ultimately like want to protect your kids. Like you don't want them to have hardships or challenging or difficult situations, but it is the thing that makes them stronger. It is the thing that grows. So rather than remove them from that situation or like kind of place blame or, oh, that's their thing. That's not you. It's like, hey, what can you do in this moment and in this environment that is going to make you stronger? What can we take from it? So I really appreciated that from her. So I say all that to say, then I go to Penn State and I loved coaching for Russ or playing for Russ. And I should call him coach because that's weird, but now we're adults and we like call each other by their names. But so playing for coach and he was like super competitive. Like we're competing in everything we absolutely do. We're gonna outwork literally every team and we're gonna be insanely prepared. Like our scouting reports, I think every person on his staff is doing a scouting report. It's all getting put together and we're talking about it like 5 times. And we would come out and like I just felt like we knew that opponent so well. And I knew and we had like 100% confidence in how hard we were gonna work and how we were gonna outlast teams. And then we just competed really hard. And I think he recruited and assembled people that were competitive. And so we were just kind of a group of us being super competitive, really hardworking, really prepared, and it made us really dangerous. And I always appreciate that from him. And I got to play kind of overseas for a variety of different coaches, some of which were really good technicians, like the technical side of things, breaking down training, being able to kind of explain some technical work. Some of them are really good scouts. Like they just have a nuanced way of the way that they disseminate information. And so I really appreciate that. Same with kind of fast forward with my time on the national team. I think, my first head coach was Hugh. And I thought he was one of the most amazing, like one-on-one coaches. Like it didn't matter. I mean, he's not a setter coach, but he would come in and work with like a setter and middle, and he could demo the middle attack. He could demo the set and what he was trying to articulate, what he was doing. And in the hour, you were like, I just fundamentally got so much better. And like only 60 minutes. That's wild. And so I just remember that from him. I was like, gosh, there's got to be a way, like the way that the demo and the simplification of like how he would explain it. And then, fast forward to Karch. And I think one of the things that Karch brings to the table is just how thorough and intentional he shows up in a space. Like he absolutely like says he's going to do something, he absolutely will. And it's been thought about like in maybe the thousands of different options that it could have been. He's thought through all those different scenarios and, he's come to a conclusion and made a decision very intentionally and very thoughtfully. And that shows up in practice planning and the way that he flows practice and the way that he gets you to understand how to learn and kind of change behavior throughout practice because it's hard. It's hard to make changes when you're trying to compete with somebody in a spot. And how do I know when it's safe to make the mistake? How do I know when it's time to compete? And I always thought that was really intentional. So I think those bits and pieces are things that I'm like, yeah, I want to do that. And I want to do that. And I want to do that. And so I'm trying to not do too much like in year one. But I think, when I think about coaching and kind of this opportunity, it's like, it's a chance to pull a lot of those pieces. I hope that our team is very competitive. We're going to compete all the time. Practice is going to be set up really intentionally. And we're going to be clear on kind of what phases of practice. We're going to be clear on kind of the mission of the team. And so I think that's really going back. It's like, could you cite your sources? And like, it's like, yes, I can. Like that's Karch. That's definitely Hugh. That's, this international coach, this Argentinian coach that I have. This is, Marcello from Fenner. Like these are all these people that I played for. And there's a little version or variation that I think will show up in my coaching philosophy.
Wow, that is amazing. It sounds like your mom laid the groundwork for all of that. Like that's
Yeah.
so
And she's going to
valuable.
love getting credit. So you're
Yeah.
welcome, Mom.
That's so valuable. I feel like
And
I
it's
just
what
learned something just from
I know.
hearing you. That's
And
amazing.
it's wonderful to hear like this like mosaic over time, not to do too much metaphor, but you're like this mosaic over time of like the individual pieces of things that you've loved from these coaches. You mentioned a lot of really cool things that you love about each of those coaches. I'm curious if there are any, so like in the way that I feel like you were a huge inspiration to me when I was growing up and playing, are there any players that like who was your Alicia? Alicia Glass. Are there any
Well, I
players that
had
you
so
took
many.
things from? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I had different inspiration for different reasons, kind of at those times because growing up, I wanted to be a setter, but I also was an attacker. I mean, I had volleyball magazine pictures like cut out, or like Cheryl Weaver back in the day. She was so fierce and so physical, and I loved that. And then like Kim Porter played UCLA, like that was crazy. And then really, I think when I knew that setting was my path, like Gresha Shapiro, who was at Nebraska, was the first like colored, female setter, like a brown skin setter. That's never happening at like a top program. And I was like, that's what I want to go do and be. And so I think, I've always like looked at someone that's going to do great. And then knowing Salima, like I didn't get her all 4 years in college, but I think even just like she would step out on the court sometimes and like she still got it and she's still running around like talking and the way that she communicated and I really appreciated and valued the way she showed up and I think if you watch her play versus you watch me play like there's some similarities but there's also a lot of differences but I it's kind of one of those things where like oh I like the way she shows up and and even to this day like just jumping into practice with us when I was playing like I was like ooh I need to be more like that like I can lean into that a little bit more so I feel like I've had kind of inspiration players all across the board. And then, when you go kind of international, you're watching players and setters that whether it's, the Brazilian national team or the Italian national team, like just producing these insanely good setters. But then I also like you look at the men's game, like a player like DeCecco, and that wasn't necessarily growing up, but his creativity is like unmatched, right? So it's like I'm not necessarily running around doing exactly what he's doing, but I'm like, I want more of that. And then I also want to encourage it. Like I think that form of play and creativity is really important. So I think um there's lots of value, but I also get value from, it could be attackers, it could be middles, the way that they approach. I'm a big Molly McCage fan and I like want to teach my middles the things that she's doing, right? Her return to base and her discipline, her level of discipline and the way that she transitions is pretty significant when you watch if you're looking for the right things. And so I think there's never kind of a stoppage to like that, like fangirling about all these other players, young, old, in the past. I get pretty fired up when I see things. I'm like, ooh, that, like, that's what makes them great. Like, that's really cool.
Yeah,
Okay, now
absolutely.
I have a question. I'm a right side. Who should I be looking at?
Ooh, right side.
I
Well,
guess
what's your, I think, no, go
I'll take an outside too. No, I want a right side. I want a right side.
ahead. You want a right side. Let me think about that. So I think that the right side position is so interesting to me because when you go international, it's usually kind of somebody long, lanky, like just gonna kind of you throw off the ball and they're just crushing. And I do appreciate that, and I'm hopeful that our opposite's gonna do that because she's exactly that. So I think there's that, but I also really resonate with like a Teeler, like from Indy
Oh
and
yeah.
her not being that, but being quick and fast and springy. And when I played on the national team with Kelly Murphy, like she was not that. She was like quick and let's get on the ball fast. So
Yeah.
I appreciate both, and I think it's really about like what am I and what do I bring to the table and how do I get the most out of that. So I appreciate an opposite that plays to their strengths, whether that's like, hey, I'm shoddy. Like Brittany Abercrombie is obviously somebody to watch because I think not only she has heat, but it's like she's just picking the lock all the time about
Hmm.
how do I score. And so sometimes people forget that she has the heat because she's like, yeah, well, if I could just like throw it down into the
Yeah.
middle of the donut, like why do I like what are we doing here?
Yeah.
And if I could just go off hands, like why do I have to like hit, try to hit this like amazing shot around the block? And so I just feel like that is totally her strength. And I love watching her do that. And I think more attacker, like what I would want in both pin attackers is like how creative and how expansive can your toolkit be? Because because then once you start doing one thing, you pick it up. She's like, okay, I'll do the other one.
Hmm.
Oh, you're gonna
Hmm.
stop that? Okay, I'll do that other thing. And I think not every hitter has that. It's like maybe we have four where she has like 20,
Yeah.
and maybe that's an exaggeration,
Yeah.
but I think when you have a hitter that can do that, it's like it's really cool because kind of depending on the defense and the other team's scheme, like you're like, oh, I got it. It's okay. I'll just there's a shot for that.
Yeah.
So I appreciate her for that, and I think that's something that she's learned and developed over time, that she's brought to her game. So I really do like that. But I think opposites are kind of all shapes and sizes in terms of their game, whether they play fast or kind of that like slower game where you're getting like high and physical.
Nice. Well, thanks for indulging in my very selfish question
No,
that
I
I
love
just
that
I just
question.
thought of off the top of my head.
Yeah, it was good. Yeah.
Yeah, I
I was
guess
just
my
gonna say,
question
oh,
in
Ian, go
that
ahead.
too, yeah, real quick, was just
Ian,
like
what position are you watching?
oh, my position is on the bench and I
Oh.
watch from there. I'm like the team manager in high school terms.
Okay. Those are important. Those are
Yeah,
very important. You got
big.
to be dialed
Yeah.
in.
So I'll have the
Absolutely.
bag. But yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I guess
Snacks.
coming from yeah, from Athletes
Yeah.
Unlimited to the MLV, it seems like specifically you talk about a lot about creativity. You also talked about going back to your college days, how much scouting is involved, how much tape there is, especially, in a league like the MLV where you've got, the same players for the whole season. And it seems like it would be hard sometimes in systems that can be so prescribed to help people flourish creatively inside of those systems when you know that there's sometimes such a tight window of success against these defenses that you're playing against. And it just seems interesting. How do you find the balance between scouting and the data that you're giving players versus letting them kind of, yeah, find what works for them and express themselves?
Yeah. Really good question. And I think this is a fun kind of which way do you skew? Because, some coaches are like, give them all the information. Some are like, don't give them any because they can't do it. And I think where I probably sit with it is that I want to develop a really simple system, something that you could almost do in your sleep that we practice, train, and execute, where you can build trust and like, this is our system. And then the creativity is like, how can I teach you as a player to recognize some things in real time, recognize trends. Like she's done this now two or three times. Can we adjust? And so I want them to be able to start recognizing them themselves. And I think from a video standpoint, I want players to be able to understand teams that they might get into that trend. right? So if I'm watching, film on Brittany and I recognize that she has this kind of jam to the middle of the court, and then, and if you come across, she might then go do this, like, what's your plan for that? And did you know that about her? Because sometimes when we watch film, players will go, yeah, she scored on that short tip. And you're like, statistically, that was like one, but maybe it was at a really important moment and it felt really big.
Mm-hmm.
And so you kind of I want to be prepared as a coach, and I want our staff to be watching enough film that we have a really good understanding of kind of all the different scenarios that could happen with any given team, any given matchup, if they're going to sub in different players. We want to have a depth of knowledge, right? And so I think that's really important to just know the opponent really in and out. But I think I want the team to know the basics. And then can we then level up of like noticing trends, and can we kind of have a good understanding, just a general understanding, so that then when we get into that situation, we have to make that adjustment. They're like, oh yeah, I did see that, or I do understand what that means. And we can go on the fly. And I think that's where the creativity is, and like, what do they need to know and when do they need to know it? And then how much can I instill upon them to start coming to us? So maybe in the beginning, it's really, coaching focus, but ideally you want to get in a situation where they go, hey, I noticed that she did, do you want me to make that change? And I think that's something that, I don't know if you guys have watched how many of the games you watched, but Natalia, the Brazilian Natalia, the attacker, she is doing that. So she'll be like, hey, that was twice. Like, you want me to take a step? And I'm like, oh, I love this. Like, because she's played so much volleyball, and she's like, hey, coach, like, and I love that she asked me, because she could have just done it on her own probably. But, it's that you want to get into that sort of relationship, but that does require the system has to be clear. And now I'm asking to deviate from the system
Mm-hmm.
in a way that's educated and I understand what's going on. And so I think you want to find that's where I would probably sit with it, is like, simple is better, but how do I like increase your IQ, increase your like eyes on like, what can I see and when, and how fast can I see it? Because you see coaches all the time be like, you couldn't see that come in. Her hand was like straight, straight up. It
Yeah,
didn't even
sure.
bend. It didn't even get back. And you're like, what the heck? And ideally, like, how do you go backwards and say like, yeah, maybe we aren't seeing it. And then like, how do I teach you to see it? And then how do we train, the execution of all of that? And so in a perfect scenario, the longer the season goes on, the quicker they're picking those things up. And then that way we don't have to give them so much information. We just have to say, hey, let's go play our system and be ready to adjust.
Awesome.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
That's super cool. This makes me think about like a technical setter question that I wanted to ask you. So there's like, so my understanding is like there is the system and like the plan, which is sort of what I think you've been talking about so far, right? Like what we're going to do in which scenarios when it comes to the other team. I also hear a lot about like out of system in terms of after the first ball, if it is not a perfect pass or dig, right? So like when we're thinking about that, like out of system strategy, when you're not getting great passing, as a player, you make the hard set like a lot of the time. The like against the flow, from the floor, hard set, which I love.
Guilty.
Obviously, I love it. As a setter, watching you, like that was what I tried to figure out and do as much as possible. Obviously, then that's like pretty tough on you over time. And then as we watch this high level of play in this league, there are some setters who aren't going to make the hard set a whole lot, and they're going to chuck it up to the outside. Although when we go in person, we realize it's not that high. It's still pretty quick. But it's one of these things where like seeing the outsides get 50 swings in a match is different than making a tough set as a slide from the ground, right? So how do you, I guess, where did you learn that like out that tough set and when to go against the flow? And how important is that to you to teach your setters or to establish as like a plan?
Yeah, I think it's I mean, I love checking a long range slide. That's one of my favorite things. Um and it's hard to kind of unlearn that habit, because it was fun with like Feluca, and it was fun
Yeah.
with Molly, and those Krista Hartmano in college, like
And
that's
you need a middle who's
kind
going to
of
believe you're going to do it, right?
Yeah,
Like
absolutely.
that's the
Yeah.
plan, right? Is like a middle
Yeah.
who's still going to run it and still trust that it's an option.
Yeah, I think there's kind of a philosophical lens on this, is I love kind of being tricky, being creative, trying to fool the blockers, like that's a goal. But I also think it kind of has to go hand in hand with like a hittable set and setting up, that particular attacker for success. And so, to your point, like, can that middle run? Can they wait? Can they see the set? Can they hit with probably now two blockers, four hands? And are they going to make great choices? Because if those things aren't true, then I don't need a long set just for myself, right? And then same to be said with like, okay, I might like do some play. Like you'll see Shampoo from, Orlando and, formerly Nutsara, like this like play on timing.
Hmm.
And I think that's also great. But if I play on timing as a setter and and accidentally like trap set you, then I get you one on one and you hit it straight into the block. Like that's not a win, right? And so you kind of want to find that balance of what we can execute, what's putting, setting your hitters up for success is, chucking it back to an opposite. If your opposite's not great out of system, then again, that's not the right choice. So I think you want to, um, you know, in any given team, you got to figure out like, okay, where are our strengths? What can we get good at? And like, what's worth chucking it back, and also like, if we think we have the players to do it, then we got to train it, right? And so, and whether that's worth our time and attention on that. And I think you could say if we're not as strong passers and we have a great setter that can do that, then I'm going to be like, yeah, let's do that more. Because we can keep working on our passing, but at the end of the day, if we can kind of solve an out of system pass problem with a really good kind of long range offensive solution, then I think we're in really good shape. So I think it's really personnel dependent. I think you want to start with like, hey, what are the hittable balls that we can hit, and then who has the ability to kind of be effective in those scenarios when you get a little bit more creative or when you go more long range.
Yeah, cool. I love it. Um, Other things about systems. I would love to know, what are your thoughts on the two libero system? Because Kelly and I were like, in high school, could you do that when we were playing, right? And then I had a memory of like, well, no, because I do remember that if we switched liberos between sets, someone was in the corner, like taking their
Yeah,
shirt
because
off, like you like
what,
switching
Nikki,
colors.
you graduated high school 2010. I was
Yeah,
2012.
yeah.
I feel like there was maybe 1 year where they were playing around with it.
Where they practiced it.
Yeah.
But I couldn't remember when it became an NCAA rule exactly. And I don't know exactly how common it is abroad either, like in those leagues. But I'm just feeling like so I guess all that to say, I don't know if it's like brand new, but I'm seeing it more lately. And I don't think that it's been possible for all that long in the grand scheme of things. So I kind of want to know what you think about it. When is it the right move? Are you surprised that it's become more common, at least at the NCAA level lately? And yeah, been your experience there?
Yeah, I think it's kind of it's a solution to a challenge that you see not quite commonly, because I'm not going to discredit the libero position. I don't want to offend anyone. But sometimes, just like an outside hitter, you might get an outside hitter that can really point score that doesn't pass well, and you might get an outside hitter that's really good ball control, doesn't score. Same with a libero, you might get one that's so defensive minded that's maybe just not as strong passing, and so then you get that one that's a passer, but wasn't always a great defender. And so the idea is that we're splitting the difference, right? So we have kind of that passing focus bro, and we have the defensive minded. So I think it is a solution to that challenge if you had those two personalities, those two types of players, where let's get the most out of both of them. I think it's hard to do, because I think, with any time, it's like being in the double sub, consistently. You have to have two of the right setters, you have to have the right people that can come off the bench. You have to like, they have to probably get along because they're going in and out, and they can't be like, "Ugh, you suck there." Like there's
Well,
all these things
they
at
never have to
play
play
here.
together. So,
No, but then just, the crossing of the,
The
no,
vibes.
but in practice, it's like,
yeah.
who's with who and where and what during practice. And, I'm sure one of them thinks they can defend better than they're giving them credit, and the other one thinks they're passing a little bit better. So, because you want to be on the court all the time. So it is a solution. I don't know if it's my favorite solution. But I do think it's the same with like, you could make the argument, I don't love the back row automatic sub for an outside. It's not my favorite thing, but if I needed it, I would need it. And so
Yeah.
then you do it. And it's actually, a cool thing that happened, at Athletes Unlimited. Usually if you're a captain, you're not taking yourself out because you're going to lose opportunities. But as soon as Cooper became captain, she's like, no, I think it's working when you take me out. So like, we're going to do that. And we're going to draft according to that plan, which I appreciate. She's saying, hey, I need some help here. And it works when, you're helping and then more people can play. And I think that's what makes the team successful. And I'm going to keep working on my passing, but, for now, I kind of want to just win. And I think we're going to have a better chance of winning if that happens. And so I appreciate that level of understanding. And I think that took, that wasn't every captain's experience. That, we've seen captains like, I'm going to play my worst match, but I'm never coming off the court. And I think that that's happened maybe in years past. And I just think it shows like some maturity on her part to go, what's best for the team isn't necessarily what's best for like my individual stat sheet. And I might like the break of not having to be served all match. But I also think it begs the question that, and this is where I get challenged in it because I appreciate that from her. But then it makes me go, internationally, we can't really be doing that. And so, because we don't have that re-entry. And so I think it begs the question, like, what is the goal? Is it to be kind of a version of an international event, in which case she would only get to do that one time? And same with kind of in MLV with like the possible re-entry for a double sub is that, yes, it gets more people playing, it gets, more offensive power, but what is the goal with the league? Is it to orient more towards kind of what the FIVB is doing and what the international piece is doing? And I think that goes back to even like in the college game, having so many subs, it's not necessarily helpful for future pro teams to have players that can't do certain skills. And I think we felt that pain on the national team of having really high level athletes come from college into the national team and not have really served in a match or like not have taken a second ball or not have played, 6 rotations or even back row very much at all. And so that always felt like, dang, like we don't get like we, the USA, don't get that caliber player because she's not developed. And we don't know how long or when she'll even come back because we've lost some that don't actually do that. They don't do that developing and then they don't come back to us and then we just miss on that player. And I think but at the same time, I'm a competitor. So if I'm in college and if I'm coaching college, like you best believe I'm going to use that. Like you're going to use all those subs that you need if you need them. And so it just begs the question, like, does that, as we're seeing these pro leagues established, and if they're going to play more international, I've even heard it from some of the players, like, I wanted to go to a place where I could play 6 rotations because I want to be ready for pro. And I think that's the beautiful thing that's, I think, going to happen. And then the question will be, will the rules start changing? Because, and probably not, because, the rosters are expanding and how do you even, like, get these people out on the court? So it's a whole different ballgame. But at the same time, I like to see players recognizing that and saying, hey, and even if it's not in match, but like, I need it in practice and I need it maybe an extra time and I need it definitely in the spring at the very minimum, that hunger of like, okay, I get it. I'm not ready yet, but I'm not just going to be hidden, that I actually want to train and develop for my future pro career. And so I think some of those conversations are already starting to happen, which I greatly appreciate because I think you don't want to see someone really shorten their career because they don't have opportunity because they weren't developed. And that's just a big miss, I think, for the volleyball community as a whole.
Yeah.
So
it's a
what? Oh,
Kelly, go ahead.
I was like, what are the subbing rules for Athletes Unlimited? I guess I've never thought about it.
You get 6. So you get 6 like international, but we are allowing re-entry. So that's the one difference. So normally international, it's 6 with no re-entry and we allow re-entry.
Okay.
And just like MLV is 8 with the re-entry. So
Yeah.
so you still have only 6, but she can, if you don't do any other subbing, but it makes you think about it. So if you did commit to that system and you did it, she goes through maybe 3 rounds, is that like all of your subs? And if you commit to doing that, you probably want her to go through like once, because what if we did need the double sub? And so kind of each team makeup is going to challenge that a little bit. So even though you can do the reentry, you still have to be cognizant of it, because 6 is, even though it's only 2 less, it's still like a pretty significant, like it's a couple decisions that you have to be intentional about.
Yeah.
Yep. Absolutely. Cool.
What were you going to say, Nick?
Oh, I was thinking about Um, So, like something I've said on this podcast a lot is the fact that there are so many, there have been in prior years to MLV existing so many, like hundreds of American players who are playing pro abroad. And that when I was coming up as like a D3 player, there was just like no chance at all that would be something I felt like I could do. And then even friends who went D1, if they weren't at the top of the top, they probably weren't going to do it either. And I've thought about how much talent there is at a lot of different levels. I'm not necessarily saying I should have played at D3. I'm just saying that there are a lot of American, particularly women's volleyball players who are looking to play. And this idea of like, where can I go play 6 rotations? Like for me, my college choice was where can I go and win and play? And like at my height and at my level, I was like a solid D3 program with the academic thing was right for me. There are a lot of players who have a lot of D1 options for them. And it's like, can I go ride the bench at a very, very top program? Or can I go somewhere and never see the floor until maybe my junior year, but I win a natty? So that's cool. And it's cool to be a part of something really big. Or do I play for this lower team, lower level D1 team and maybe not win a national championship, but I get to play all the time. And now there's just more opportunity for that player to maybe break through with a pro
I,
position.
I feel like with the transfer portal, like that's what you see is like you see these players like maybe really shine at the lower level programs and then
Hmm.
transfer for their last
Sure.
2 years or something
Yeah.
to Texas,
Yeah. I'm just thinking about like
Penn State.
that experience, right? Like that, like how can I get better and what could my ceiling even be? And that it feels like, yes, the transfer portal has maybe, although I hear I hear that's a contentious topic among some groups. I don't know what you think about that. I'm not necessarily asking, but that is something that maybe enables us, and like more opportunity to play is something that enables just more people to think about what skills they want to develop and what type of player they could be. And yeah, I know people talk about the opportunity all the time, but that's really the thing that I think is the one of the coolest outcomes of their being pro in the US is like that skill development
Mhm.
ceiling essentially.
Yeah, and yeah, there's unless you directly ask me, I'm not touching some of that. But and you can, and I'll
No
do my
need.
best. But I think the point that you're making is really important, and I think that's why having pro leagues in the US is important because I remember like knowing so clearly that like okay, I'm headed straight towards that national team goal, and I'm wanting to go to the Olympics, and I'm wanting to play pro. And I think that if you weren't in that bucket of people, then you really weren't going. And so I think to your point, like having pro, it's doing two things. It's allowing people to go, oh, there's pro, I could go do that because it's in front of me. It's
Mhm.
happening. It's here in the US. People are talking about it. And so I know what pro looks like. And I go, oh, I played with her, so I probably can. And so I think the goal is like that people reach for that and they can see it. Like I had to subscribe to Volleyball Magazine to like understand like what's going on in the world of volleyball, but they have it at their fingertips, both in the pro league and also, with social media and understanding kind of we have volleyball TV, like we can see international matches. So there's beautiful like accessibility happening right now that it's like, okay, now more people are dreaming, more people that feel like there is that opportunity. And then I think this is just it's probably a personal problem because I valued greatly my time abroad. It wasn't just some people go because they really want to travel the world and it's like the vehicle, but I really fundamentally enjoyed playing abroad. And I was also very challenged by being abroad and being away from my family and being less connected than, athletes are now. But language barriers, culture differences, having to figure out a coach that like barely speaks to you or doesn't, speak your language and kind of only tells you this one thing every time. Like, and like you have to figure it out and you have to problem solve away from maybe your support system and the people that you're comfortable with. And there's something really beautiful about that. And with the added bonus of like you can develop some like really lifelong friendships and connections that are, foreigners and people that will eventually maybe come visit you and all of that. So I love that we have a pro league here in the US because I do think it allows people to reach, but it also allows people to go, yeah, I don't want to go overseas. That seems hard.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just want to play here in the States and then I'll
Mm-hmm.
be good. And,
Yep.
that's coming up in some of our conversations. And that's not necessarily a critique, but I get a little saddened that someone
Yeah.
wouldn't now go for that because I think there is something really special about that. And so it's almost like we've provided an opportunity for you to avoid that discomfort or that challenge of being overseas. And I mean, like my time, and I'm touching on like my time at Finding Mastery and like doing some performance mindset work, but it's like we're allowing athletes to avoid the discomfort of being
Hmm.
disconnected, being in a foreign country, being in a hard situation again, like to kind of go back to that earlier point of like they're allowed to avoid the challenge in that when it could be actually really good for them to go experience that. And so I worry a little bit about athletes that are closing themselves
Yeah.
off to that opportunity. And I
Mm-hmm.
think maybe, where I sit with it is like, yeah, maybe you start here in the US, you get an idea what pro is, and then I hope you go,
Yeah.
at some point. I hope you do,
Mm-hmm.
and I hope you don't kind of live and die by only this, and don't experience the other things. And maybe you just need to take a minute and then go. That's fine, but I hope you go, at
Yeah.
least to experience it. So I'm trying to have that optimistic lens on it that we aren't just going to go, this is the only thing I'm going to do just because it's the easiest thing that I can do. And not
Yeah.
that it's easy.
No,
I'm not
Yeah.
totally.
saying that
Yeah.
necessarily,
No,
but
no.
I think you get what I mean.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No,
totally with you.
yeah, that's not the first time I've heard that. I have a couple of friends who played abroad and they're like, "Oh no, like it's the best thing in the world." Like I hope like they want people to keep going. So,
Mm-hmm.
I
And I
hope
think
yeah.
that's like that brings up two things for me, which is that like the first is that hopefully we're like in year three and like these are the conversations that players can have with each other and
Yeah.
players can have with
Like a
you and
little bit of
like
a mentoring
start to hear
thing.
that like there are more options here and that's a good thing and so you shouldn't necessarily just do this because it feels like the easy thing. Like there can be conversations about those benefits. But the second thing that I'm like glad we to hear you say that and to like have an opportunity to talk about it here is because um we do this thing on the internet and there are so many people who will be like, she's leaving the MLV for France, blah, blah, blah. And the MLV is doomed now. And it's just like, no, every time I hear someone signs abroad, like, I'm like, good for you. Like, like I'm like so excited. This is like a cool opportunity. Who knows how it would have gone if you, what order you did stuff in, like, but at least you're having that experience and it's like you get to keep doing this as a job. And so like I think that if that direction of popping around to different places is like seen as something failing, then I don't think we're like being player first minded at all. You know, like it has to be for the players, like and what's best for them.
Yeah, and I think we're just having to recalibrate too, because I only ever stayed in a city one time, like or a country one time. I
Mm-hmm.
stayed in Amoco my last 2 years, but I was in Poland, in Turkey, in Puerto, like I moved all around. And so I think to the people who have that international understanding of the lay of the lands, like yeah, every once in a while you get a multi-year contract if you really like your setup, but it takes a minute to kind of figure that out. And um, or maybe you do sign a 2 year deal just because you want to, like maybe you went from a non-starter to a starter, but it is very normal to move around. And I think that if you weren't switched on, like if you're a US fan or you've become a US pro volleyball fan, you might just not be switched on to the fact that that's very normal. So like you
Hmm.
see, Ashley Evans, like in Grand Rapids, then goes abroad, gets that experience, now is coming back. So I think we're going to see it more. We're going to see it happen more. And I think the fans are just going to start to come to understand like, oh, okay, this isn't like one versus the other. It's just like, let's do this tour of like getting all this experience. And
Mm-hmm.
I think hopefully we get more and more foreigners and you'll see, oh, like, just like I'm choosing to go to Poland, they're choosing to come to the US. And like, we're in the conversation. That's the
Yeah.
goal, is to be in the
Mhm.
conversation of kind of that variety that you see in your pro career. I just think it's hard for us. The US is big and we tend to get US centered and focused and that's not like, it's not, again, not a criticism, but it's just something that I think happens sometimes when we forget kind of what's happening culturally, maybe in other countries, and
Mhm.
what's kind of been expected from them before people came to start watching the U.S. leagues.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean,
And in
it
American
seems like it
sports in
would,
general,
yeah, and
really.
it seems like it would only help legitimize the MLB if players and fans can see it as a, a platform that can, get you jobs overseas in leagues that might be more established or, you know, have a bigger profile in Europe than the MLB or a larger history. That seems like, yeah, why wouldn't you want that? So,
Absolutely. It's good for the game
Yeah.
on both ends. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we've got a few minutes left. I do want to talk about this upcoming year.
Wait,
So I've
Nikki,
got, oh,
will you please ask your question about the jersey?
the jersey attack signals.
Yeah.
Okay.
hmm.
Please.
So,
Uh-oh.
yeah. So something
Uh-oh.
something I'm curious about is when did you start hiding your attack signals like with your jersey? And is it possible that you started that? Because because I learned
Who
it from
taught you
you.
it?
Who taught it? Who I learned it from you. So who did you learn it from?
Oh
She's
my
trying to find
gosh.
the origin.
Yeah. I don't know who taught me that. I mean, I feel like I probably started in college. But I think it was just more, and maybe it started in our again, I'm not going to claim that I started it, but I where it evolved for me was, when you're competing and you're playing against each other, it's like, okay, I don't want you to know what I'm running, and I don't know, and
Yeah.
so then it's like, how do you not telegraph that? And I feel like coach even probably was like, well, don't give it, like, don't give away your signal, like, don't do that. So it's like, okay, well, all right. Do I need
So
to turn my back? And
what were you
it's
doing before college?
hitting. I don't know. I
Oh.
wasn't setting. I don't know. No, I mean, I did set a little bit, but yeah, like I was an outside hitter on my high school team. I played middle my freshman year. I passed all 6 rotations, and I only really got to set in club where I set and hit opposite. And almost all of my USA kind of junior experiences were as an opposite. And so I didn't set until later. So I probably was like, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just like setting the ball, like. And then if someone's like, okay, this is called a system. You should play call. And it's like, you need to get up to speed and just like, but don't tell them what you're doing.
Yeah,
So I feel like that, and even now, sometimes I'm like, I want to almost like let the middles do it like a pitcher in baseball, like the catcher and the pitcher.
Yeah.
Like, can you give me, especially in rotation one, like, can you give me the call so I don't have to like find a way to like,
Yeah.
because they're staring
Yeah.
right at
Yeah,
me, like,
totally. Oh my
on the
God.
side,
I only
like,
have so much
what can we do?
jersey.
So yeah. So I'm like, you give me the call, and I'll be like, I'll shake you off, and I'll be like,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
don't do
Yeah.
yeah.
this, and then like this whole like nose thing, or like some
You're
sort of
right.
signaling sometimes, like, hey, can you give it to
Yeah.
me? It's just in that one, like,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
every other time you can go
Yeah.
behind your back, but yeah, in
Yeah.
rotation one, come on, middles, like,
Yeah.
give me a call.
You know what's going on.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
I love
it's,
that.
Okay,
there's only so many
cool.
options, like it's like
Yeah,
a
no,
click or a gap,
exactly.
like.
Absolutely. Okay, cool. Um, Couple minutes left, so we want to talk about this upcoming year. Your roster right now has 16 players, some returners, some new faces to the league, some boomerangs, and some transfers. Obviously, you're excited to coach all of them, but are there a couple who are very exciting to you that they're on your squad, or are there some players that we should like keep our eye out for that you think are going to make a big impact this year?
I mean, I'm excited. I feel like when I was late to market, right? I think that's like no secret that I got hired kind of day two of open market, which is, um, so when I had conversations with players, it was really like, how do we put the team together? One, like with like the people that are interested and kind of haven't already signed, but also like with the precursor of like, I want you to be a really good human, and I want you to want to be a part of kind of us building it. And I think there's going to be some people that say like, hey, you're behind the eight ball, so like on paper you might not be as strong, and so like, are you willing to come and prove people wrong? Like that's kind of like the place where we have to operate from. And so I feel like that my conversation with those people, like they're like, yeah, let's go. Like I'm in it. So I feel like I'm excited for everybody that said yes to that, right? And to a first time head coach, and like a person's like, hey, we're gonna go figure this thing out. Like we're just gonna go. So I appreciate all of them for that. That meant a lot for them to like put their trust in me and what we're building. So I think that's really exciting. And then we reached to go get Jovana Rakocevic, the Serbian. I have never actually played with her, but I played against her, and we actually ended up in Turkey together one time in a weight room where we like really got to like communicate and talk. And she was talking about her son and motherhood and all of that, and that was pre me having kids. And then when her agent said she like might be interested, I was like, oh, we like let's go, like come on, and I'm like, do I have to play the mom card? Like we're moms are in it together, and but she's done some, coaching on her national team and is interested in the fact that we have a lot of female head coaches, which isn't always the case in Europe. And I thought there was good synergy there, and I'm hopeful that, she kind of takes on kind of that leadership, like help the players. And I think that's also good to have, you can pivot to like having Morgan Lewis come back, being a San Diego local with like trying to build that community support around their kind of hometown hero. So I think that's really exciting. And I think their game is similar, and that I think there's things she's going to be able to learn from Joe, and that we're going to be able to use both of them. So I'm excited for that. And um, I had talks early with Marley, and I'm excited that she's getting an opportunity. And August coming back, like I got to train with August for a little bit coming into Athletes Unlimited, and Taiba had reached out at the time, and she was like, hey, August, she's going to be playing with me. Can she come train with you guys? Just find a gym that's competitive. And I was like, yeah, I also like, she's a setter. So like, do we have to split time? And she's like, oh no, she can hit, she can set, she can pass for you. Like, she doesn't matter. She's just like super excited to, come in. I was like, okay. And then we got to know each other, and she literally was that. Like, I'll do whatever. Like, that's cool. I'm super athletic. I can do anything. I was like, well, dang, and so that was really impressive to me. And so I think I'm really excited about the trio of setters right now. And like ultimately, we've had conversations with them about like probably not want three full time, but that they're all willing to compete. Like we have two kind of former Vegas thrill athletes coming. So Grace, I think I want to see more from Grace. I've seen like what Grace can do kind of in practice day in and day out, and her physicality and what she brings as a blocker. And so I'm excited to see like what she can do, and maybe we haven't seen it yet in match, for a whole season. So I'm excited for that and fired up. And then, bringing Carly in, she's here at Athletes Unlimited, and I just think she's like, I want a chance, like, just give me a chance, like let me go fight out. And I'm like, okay, step one, great human, good person, like gonna do it. That's that bar, that standard. And so I'm excited for the trio of them, and then, for them to duke it out and compete, and also be kind to each other, and like know that like they're in it to kind of make the situation the best that they possibly can. And then, it's been really great getting to know Dalkey a little bit with and Tebron, like them being kind of back in San Diego and committed to kind of staying in that space. So getting to know them, talking about, things that they think are really successful, things that they think we can upgrade, things that we can do. And it was fun because Tebron was actually playing abroad when we were kind of in negotiations. She was playing for her national team. And I think hers was like the most intense interview. She's like, okay, so I have my long list of questions, and like, I was like, oh, okay, all right, let's go. And we ended up talking for a really long time. And I was like, I respect the heck out of that. Like, it's really cool that you're really curious about me, and like, you're like, hey, listen, I haven't played with you. That, because there's players that are like, I know you, right? And I know what you bring to the table, and I've heard from a friend, and I think she was coming from the place like, I was a rookie last year. I played against you, but like, what's your actual deal? Like, like what are you about? And so that was pretty cool. And then I'm fired up about our middles. We have 5 of them right now, and they all bring something like really different. Whether it's like really offensive or really block minded, really good server. So I'm pretty fired up. And I think sometimes, the season is long. I want us to be really deep in a way where like, hey, like you guys go through the front this time, we need more blocking, so it's going to be you. And really think about each position group really as something that's working together to get the best that they possibly can. So recognizing like it might not be me, but I get why it's you, and I got your back in a really cool way. So I'm hopeful for that from that position. And then, Shada coming back and being like, she's like the face, right? And it's been really cool because people who have reached out about San Diego or that were in the local market, they're like, we're so glad you brought her back. Like she's
Oh.
like
Yeah.
the soul of San Diego. And like,
Oh.
and she feels that too. I think she wanted to stay and she was like, come on, like, let's make this work. So, I'm excited about each and every one of them, at the base level, just that they're good humans. They're gonna kind of start the culture with me kind of in my year one and really build on that and make it a place where like people just want to come play because we're having so much fun and we're fiery and competitive and all of those things.
Yeah. Amazing. I love that I asked about any individual players and you truly you went through the whole team. So I love that. That's
off the top
incredible.
of your head, I
Off the
believe.
top,
I
just
don't
Also,
had it
like
all.
Scully, also don't, no, I can't be missing my people, but Scully being a California girl too, but no,
No, I know.
because I really am. I think
I
it's
know.
really like
Yeah.
putting them together and knowing that they're wanting to build and grow and compete and battle. So I was really appreciative in the process of like getting to know them if I hadn't already, and for them to get to know me and to take a chance on me the same way that I would take a chance on them. So I think we're in it like in a really cool way.
Yeah.
Incredible.
That's awesome.
Awesome.
Well,
Well, we're
at
definitely
time.
going to be coming to San Diego.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
That's the
Yay!
hope. That's the plan. Well, we're in Chicago. Where are we going to go for a February match? We got to find
San Diego.
something.
Gotta
We
get
gotta
out.
find.
Yeah, it has to be California.
We have to
Yeah.
do it. So we hope to see
Yeah.
you there and then. And we'll hit
Yeah.
you up. And thank you so much. This
This
has
is
been so wonderful.
amazing.
A dream of mine,
Yeah.
obviously,
Yeah.
if that hasn't been stated clearly.
Yeah.
But just so great to hear from you. Your passion is like unmatched. Truly, like really impressed and appreciative of you. So
Yeah.
thank you so much.
Thank you so
Oh,
much
this
for
is
your
fun.
time.
Yeah. I'm like happy to have been here. This is really cool. I appreciate it and I can't wait to see how you guys put it together and what you're doing is important and I think it's important for people to like feel like they have access to understand, what's happening in the league, what are we thinking about the game, how we're growing it, how the traps or the data, just different things like that you can illuminate on this platform. So I really appreciate you guys doing it and happy to help in any way that I can.
That's
Thank you so
nice.
much.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah.